Constitution of the United States. One nuclear weapon. Like 2020, 2021 has been heavily defined by the coronavirus pandemic due to the emergence of multiple COVID-19 variants, prominent of which is Omicron. However, the major global rollout of COVID-19 vaccines, which began at the end of 2020, continued in 2021. The year also witnessed a couple of elections, a few military coups, particularly in Africa, as well as conflicts in various parts of the world. History was also made by women occupying prominent positions around the world in the course of the year. On this edition of the program, we shall review the year 2021, highlighting some of the major events. Do sit back, as this promises to be an informative one. I am Abdul Salam Jibril. Welcome to Global Update. Now, a popular African proverb states, if you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. This certainly resonates with the likes of Kamala Harris, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, and Amina Mohammed, among others, that made history in 2021.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear
20th January will go down in history as the day Kamala Harris was sworn in as Vice President of the United States, becoming the first woman, first black person, and first Asian American to hold the office. She is also the first graduate of a historically black college and the first member of a black sorority to do so. The daughter of an Indian mother and a Jamaican father has risen higher in the country's leadership than any woman ever before her. Another notable woman of substance that made history in the course of the year is Nigeria's Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. Okonjo-Iweala was unanimously appointed as the next Director General of the World Trade Organization on 15th February. And she began her career as Director General on 1st March 2021. Notably, she's the first woman and first African to lead the WTO as Director General. Recall that she also served twice as Nigeria's Finance Minister and also Minister of Foreign Affairs. She was the first woman to hold both positions. In June, Nigeria's Amina Mohammed was reappointed as Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. She is serving as the 5th Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. She had also served as a special advisor to Ban Ki-moon on post-2015 development planning, which focused on the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, as well as Nigeria's Minister of Environment.
Well, they have shaped history, no doubt. These are watershed events that will be talked about in the nearest future. And then, of course, we also have our own very Amina Mohammed, although she's been there for a while, but it was renewed. So these are some of the things that basically are heartwarming. Even here in Nigeria, within the domestic environment, we had recently, 6 to 8 chief executives of banks, all women. You know, so we're seeing this trend changing. It's a good one. It's a plus. It's something that should be applauded and embraced. But the reality is, you see, we must begin to learn to play down the rhetorics and dynamics of male-female dichotomy. It's not helpful. I listened to Amina Mohammed a couple of days ago on CNN. There's this advert, the clip, where she was being asked about having the first female president in Nigeria. And she was saying she would be excited. It will be history. But the reality is, you see, when we do these things, consciously or subconsciously, we begin to undermine the position of women. one. And then secondly, we do not draw the line between good women and bad women. All we are concerned about is women. Let them flood, let them take over. Women were created to do the things that men cannot do, period. So we're not in a competition, we're not in a conflict, but it's a beautiful thing that we have people of such intellectual standing, people who have so much flair and passion for governance and transformation, that we have people, whether men or women, that are capable, that have shown time and over again their efficiency and effectiveness in positions of authority. These are the sort of things we should applaud. These are the things we should embrace. So we should see more capable women in positions of authority.
Military coups have been a regular occurrence in Africa in the decades since independence, and there is now concern they are becoming more frequent. This year, some African countries such as Sudan, Guinea, Mali, and Niger witnessed coups in their respective countries. Why are military interventions occurring more often on the continent? Protests, gunfire, internet blackout are synonymous with coups in the 21st century on the African continent. The October 25th coup in Sudan, led by General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, is the latest coup that seems to be part of a resurgence of coup culture on the continent. This year alone, the continent has witnessed several coups in Sudan, Guinea, Niger, Mali, and the Republic of Chad. A trip down memory lane shows that in the 4 decades between 1960 and the year 2000, the continent recorded an average of around 4 coups a year. Burkina Faso has had the most successful coup, with 7 takeovers and only 1 failed coup. Sudan, on the other hand, has had the most coups and attempted takeovers, amounting to 17, 5 of them successful. Other countries with the highest number of coups since 1952 are Burundi with 11, Sierra Leone and Ghana with 10. Comoros has 9, Guinea-Bissau, Mali, the Republic of Benin, Burkina Faso, and Nigeria with 8, Niger and Chad with 7.
Let's face it, the military has no business in political governance. And we thought we had passed that stage in Africa, where you had, military dictatorships. But it appears there is regression of democracy, while military incursion is in ascendancy, which is sad for West Africa, for Africa, and must be arrested. So if we were to follow the template, you know that in Guinea, in Mali, there were 2 coups within 1 year. But for God's sake, this idea of this roller coaster, taking power and then rushing to hand over to civilians, has not helped. So the advice might be for them to take time and make sure that things are done properly before they return to a civil. Otherwise, the person who will take over will be taking over what you might call a poisoned chalice.
Our politicians must be able to play politics without bitterness. Our politicians must be able to unite. You see, we must place national interest above personal interest. The issue of corruption must be stamped. We must be able to provide a fair level playing field for all.
The Israeli-Palestinian conflict reared its ugly head once again in May 2021 as Israel hit the Gaza Strip with airstrikes while Hamas increased its rocket fire. This occurred after Israel began displacing Palestinians in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood of East Jerusalem. The sirens across southern Israel were silent, and the thunder of bombs bursting in Gaza City was replaced by sounds of celebratory gunfire as a fragile ceasefire between Israel and Palestine went into force, bringing to an end 11 days of fighting that claimed more than 200 lives. The truce, mediated by Egypt, began in Israel as people on either side of the divide watched nervously to see whether it would hold. As morning dawned, with no reported violations of the truce, both sides were beginning to take stock of the deadliest Israeli-Palestinian fighting in 7 years. With the pause in fighting, the underlying causes of the conflict remain: the dispute over land rights in Jerusalem and the West Bank, religious tensions in the Old City of Jerusalem, and the absence of a peace process to resolve the conflict.
I welcome the ceasefire between Gaza and Israel after 11 days of deadly hostilities. I extend my deepest condolences to the victims of the violence and their loved ones. I commend Egypt and Qatar for the efforts carried out in close coordination with the UN to help restore calm to Gaza and Israel, and I call on all sides to observe the ceasefire. I appeal to the international community to work with the United Nations on developing an integrated, robust package of support for a swift, sustainable reconstruction and recovery that supports the Palestinian people and strengthens their institutions. I stress that Israeli and Palestinian leaders have a responsibility beyond the restoration of calm to start a serious dialogue to address the root causes of the conflict. Gaza is an integral part of the future Palestinian state, and no effort should be spared to bring about real national reconciliation that ends the division. I underscore the United Nations' deep commitment to working with Israelis and Palestinians and with our international and regional partners, including through the Middle East Quartet, to return to the path of meaningful negotiations to end the occupation and allow for the realization of a two-state solution on the basis of the 67 lines, UN resolutions, international law, and mutual agreements. I think it will be very important to stabilize the ceasefire. I think it will be very important to have a robust program of humanitarian aid and recovery for Gaza. And I think it will be very important to revitalize the peace process, to restart the peace process in order to achieve the two-state solution.
A break is up next. Not to worry, when we return, we shall beam our searchlight on the coronavirus pandemic with its several variants. Stay with us. Welcome back. And if you just tuned in, we've been reviewing major events in the year 2021. Now, Omicron has become the latest lexicon. The new variant has become contentious and spreading across the world at alarming rates. Scientists in South Africa were the first to raise the flag over the new variant. However, travel bans on some African countries accompanying the discovery, with some African leaders calling it discriminatory, while the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called it travel apartheid. On 25th November, South Africa alerted the world to a new COVID-19 variant detected in the country. It remains unknown whether the virus originated in South Africa or elsewhere. Despite the WHO's warning against knee-jerk responses, reactions have been swift. A day later, the United Kingdom placed 6 African countries, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Namibia, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, on its red alert list. The European Union, the United States, and Canada, and numerous other countries quickly followed suit. Since then, the United Kingdom has extended the ban to Angola, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, and Zambia. Under these restrictions, visitors are only eligible to enter the United Kingdom if they are a British or Irish national or have residence rights.
Let me reiterate here my full support against any form of discrimination or isolation in relation with the new variant Omicron.
I also got some calls from Europe, and the calls were so paternalistic. They were saying, "Hello, President Ramaphosa, we've heard about this Omicron. I am sorry to tell you that we are banning travel to Europe from South Africa and Southern Africa."
Travel bans and others will not work, because already some of those countries that are putting in place these bans already have them in their countries. So their argument is they're slowing the process, but we're not of the view that it'll really make any difference.
Is unacceptable, as when we have now this virus everywhere. What is unacceptable is to have one part of the world that is one of the most vulnerable parts of the world economy condemned to a lockout when they were the ones that revealed the existence of a new variant that, by the way, already existed in other parts of the world, including in Europe, as we know. So this is a very strong appeal that I launch, appeal to common sense. We have the instruments to have safe travel. Let's use those instruments to avoid this kind of, allow me to say, travel apartheid.
I think in the first place it is wrong. It is absolutely morally wrong for countries to begin to place travel ban at a time like this. So yes, of course, the United Nations Secretary General was very apt in his comment in dissuading and rebuking these countries for imposing travel bans. I mean, COVID just came a few years ago, and amidst all of that, the conversations we were having globally, on a global scale, was how to increase multilateralism and find a way to suppress the idea of these ultra-nationalistic views, so that perhaps this global scourge, such as the pandemic of COVID-19, we will be able to arrest headlong collectively, as humans, because it is something that is threatening the very existence of humanity. So I do not see any reason why just 1 year down the line or 2 years down the line into COVID, because it has, a new variant has emerged, that countries that we see as leading countries, quote unquote, around the world will begin to impose travel restriction. And this particularly is pathetic because this wasn't discovered or found in South Africa, or rather it did not emerge in South Africa, but was discovered in South Africa. We should take credit for that, rather than have these impositions and these restrictions here and there. It's not helpful. Multilateralism is the direction the world needs to begin to go right now, and it's very, very important that these leaders around the world understand the reality of collective defense and collective security, because of course this is a biological insecurity that we're being faced with, and if we don't collectively come together, we will not be able to address it.
In November, the 26th UN Climate Change Conference, also known as COP26, brought 197 countries together to accelerate action towards mitigating climate change. China and the United States to work together to mitigate climate change, complete transition away from coal, and an increase in green energy production were among the decisions reached at the summit.
Parties to the Paris Agreement are expected to transit from fossil fuel to clean energy and reach a net zero ambition for greenhouse gases emission. Nigeria is actually more of a gas than an oil-producing country. Consequently, I am requesting for financing of projects using transition fuels such as gas. Nigeria has developed a detailed energy transition plan and roadmap based on data and evidence. This plan has highlighted some key facts that faces the difficult conversations. Our transition plan also highlights the key role that gas will play in transitioning our economy across sectors, and the data and evidence shows that Nigeria can continue to use gas until 2040 without detracting from the goals of the Paris Agreement. I would like to state that attaining national and global climate change goals will require adequate and sustained technical and financial support to developing countries. In Nigeria, in the area of energy access, Nigeria's commitment to a just transition is reflected in our ambitious energy compact, which includes the government's flagship project to electrify 5 million households and 25 million people using decentralized solar energy solutions. This is a major step towards closing our energy access deficit by 2030.
The obvious question arises is how do we in Africa finance these commitments, especially as our socio-economic development continues, unfortunately, to be low. The Almighty has blessed our lands with abundant natural resources, and it would be wholly unfair for the world to demand that Africa abandons the exploitation of these same resources needed to finance her development and help us to cope better with the threat of climate change at a time when many countries on the continent have only just discovered them.
And the clock is ticking to the furious rhythm of hundreds of billions of pistons and turbines and furnaces and engines with which we are pumping carbon into the air faster and faster, record outputs, and quilting the earth in an invisible and suffocating blanket of CO2.
And together, we can seize the enormous opportunities for green growth, for good green jobs, for cheaper, cleaner power. But we need to hit the ground running to develop the solutions that we need.
Let us rise to the enormous challenge of our time, this pivotal point in history, and achieve success for not just our present generation, but all generations to come.
Global warming of 1.5 degrees Celsius and 2 degrees Celsius will be exceeded during this century unless immediate, rapid, and large-scale reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, especially the carbon dioxide and methane, occur in the nearest future.
We have to make the choice to address climate change. We have to choose the hard but necessary actions.
The pandemic has taught us that national solutions to global problems do not work. We come to Glasgow with global ambition to save our people and to save our planet. But we now find three gaps: on mitigation, climate pledges or NDCs. Without more, we will leave the world on a pathway to 2.7 degrees, and with more, we are still likely to get to 2 degrees.
A look at all the major events that occurred in the course of the year is up next. Stay with us. And that's the much we can take on the program this week. Continue to observe all safety protocols against COVID-19. I am Abdul Salam Jibril. Happy holidays.